Hello class, today I'm going to take you through the basics of designing a professional website using Adobe Muse. The first thing that you need to do is to sample some websites that really work. So you can just Google cleanest websites or best websites and start sampling through some different sites that you find that looks aesthetically appealing to you. Thinking about the elements that actually make this such an attractive website, whether it's the usability, whether it's the images, the way it's laid out. Emblem here, we're using emblems. The interactivity, ability to link up with social media. Lots of different options when you design a website. There's nothing that's right or wrong about your design necessarily, as long as it's aesthetically appealing and also has that usability aspect. So the best thing to do, like I said, is to find a model and to adapt that model to your own purposes. I've also given you some ideas about best practices. One of the biggest things that I want to emphasize today is just choosing a color palette that is aesthetically pleasing on a computer. I know lots of you like bright colors or you're into this or that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your audience is. So trying to find some, like I said, aesthetically pleasing, more universal color palettes. Also, we need to talk a little bit about white space. Don't be afraid of white space. That's something that new designers, that's probably the biggest mistake after color choices that new designers make. Space is your friend, all right? So don't be afraid of it. All right, so we're gonna get into Adobe Muse. You need to open it up, whatever version you have on your computer. This is an example of my Muse, my homepage on Muse. These are all the different websites that I've built with students or that I have built myself for different projects. I'm going to open one up just so you can see what this is like and how Adobe Muse lays out. So down here on the bottom I've got my master pages, and this is my basic format, my basic layout for my website. I also have all of my navigational controls built out of this page right here. Up at the top, I've got a bunch of important buttons. I've got plan, design, and preview. You're going to be using these three a ton. Okay. There's also publish up here. You can use this button, but there's, like with many different Adobe programs, there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing. Okay, so there's a lot of redundant buttons. So usually when I publish, I go up here to publish, but I also have a publish on this side of the program. So anyways, let's go back out to plan. This lets me kind of see the layout for my website here. These pages are the upper tier in the hierarchy. Okay, and then down below I've got sub pages. Okay, so that's important when we're designing in terms of your navigation. You've got your primary pages and then these secondary ones, and it can bridge off, you know, ad infinitum. So we're going to go in and work on building your own personal website. Like I said, first thing that I do is get organized and come out here and start a new folder. Okay, so start a new folder, call it Adobe Muse, and in here you can save all of your different websites that you make. And I would start another folder that is called whatever your website is, so professional web page. And this is important because the actual design files that you're going to be using that only Adobe Muse can read are going to go into this folder right here. But all of your HTML files, your CSS files, all of the products of designing using Adobe Muse are all going to go into one of these little files that you've made for your specific website. Does that make sense? So in Adobe Muse, you can keep all of the different websites that you develop, but you really need to start a new file for all the for all of the files that are used to actually make a web page. And we're going to talk more about the computer science behind all this works, how all this works, so that you'll understand how websites function. Okay, so that'll be towards the end of this lesson. So Adobe Muse is super awesome. It's opposed to Dreamweaver. This is another program that is another Adobe design program that lets you move from code to design really quickly. You don't have that function in Adobe Muse. You don't have as much code functionality. You can still insert code into your websites, but really this is a visual design program, which is really great for, like I said, designers, especially if you're coming over from Adobe Illustrator or InDesign, like I know a lot of students in class are. So let's go back out, and I'm going to open up I'm actually going to open up a new page, a new site. So I'm going to go up to File, New Site. Okay, and I've got a couple options here. Fluid width, 960. Okay. We're going to design in fluid width. This is going to help us design a mobile-ready website. When we do design a mobile-ready website, we have to design a little bit differently than if we were to use a fixed width. If you're interested in learning about fixed width websites and some of the things that can be done with it in terms of animation, I recommend you check out a YouTube video on how to make in fixed width. Okay, so again, we're going to do fluid width. 960 is great, and I'll show you how the user experience will change whether somebody's on a desktop or they're on a laptop or even using a mobile device. All right, so we're going to design for a fluid width. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to hit OK. And here's my new website. This is the basic thing. The first thing that I need to do is set up my master. I got to figure out what themes I want on here. Okay, and again, best practices, go find a model and adjust it, adapt it to your own purposes. First thing that I want to do right now is come up with a browser fill color. White is a great color, black is a great color. Again, that's all going to be up to your preference. All right. Next, I wanted to show you just a navigation tool here. We are set up for 960. This is 320. This is what your average iPhone will be reading. So what's great is we can use this little bar here on the side and contract our page to show what our website would look like if it's in 320. All right. So first thing that I'm going to do, I am going to make a banner. These are kind of passé, but just to teach you the principles of how these different tools up here work, I'm going to use a banner. So I've got my browser fill. Okay. Now I need to create a box up here at the top where I'm going to create a banner. So I'm going to go into Box, Rectangle tool, and I am going to use my tool to create a box, and there we go. All right. Now, to fill in the color, I'm going to actually use the fill button and the stroke button. The fill is, of course, the color that's inside. All right. We can choose whatever color we want. And we also have the stroke. And the stroke is that little tiny line outside. All right. So we have lots of different options here. We can, if we want to, we can make that outside border stronger. Okay. And again, this is going to give me a style that's time is gone. But again, I'm just trying to teach you how some of these tools work. This is the basic layout for a page. All right. So if I were to shrink this down, okay, we're moving here. Okay. So from 960 down to what this would look like if it were on a mobile device, which is 320. We can also set other borders in here. We're going to need to do that even as we design for a mobile ready website. So the next thing that we need to think about is some sort of emblem or logo. All right, emblem or logo. I believe out here this legs of steel. See this right up here? That's an emblem that the company is using. And the reason why these are important, it used to be that they'd write out the name of the website across a banner here, but in a mobile-ready world, less is better. So emblems are really important, or some sort of design that's going to make your it's going to condense well. So using these little spaces in the website in terms of designing, don't design across the whole length of the page. That's going to be hard to contract into that mobile ready website. Instead, we need to design with a little more economy, if that makes sense. And I am going to go to the box tool again, okay, and create a little emblem. Now, if you're an Adobe Illustrator designer, you might want to design something cool using one of those programs. I'm going to design in a little corner here that's not going to be bigger than 320. Okay, so here's 320. I want this to be able to collapse and be able to fill in, not be any bigger than this 320 marker. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. We're actually going to, I'm going to change the fill on this box. We will go to white, I suppose, or gray again for fill. That didn't work. Let me click on it. Here we go. Pretty ugly so far. But again, I'm just trying to show you how some of these tools work. So now what I did was I clicked on the text tool and I'm going to draw out where I want my text to go. Okay, I just did that. Come in here and here's my text, right? So I'm going to write my name. Okay, I'm going to expand it a little bit. Find a font that I really like. Well, find something that that you think works really well for who you are and who your audience is, of course. Okay, so now I've got a some sort of logo for my audience to identify whose page this is. I'm going to increase my stroke to match this other border. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to address my resize here, because what's happening is when I collapse this down, see what's happening? All right, that's going to be a problem. So this is actually what it's going to look like on my mobile phone. We don't want that. All right. So where are the controls for all this? They're right up here. This resize thing. So I actually don't want to resize this box. Okay. I've obviously set up my banner here for resizing. Okay. But I don't want this box to resize at all. So I'm going to go up here to this box and say none. All right. Now let's see what happens. All right. So that box is not going to resize, which is what I want. I'm going to pin this as well, because what's happening on that left-hand corner, it's being pushed right into that side, this side of the website. We don't want that either. So let's see what happens. I'm going to re-click on this box and I'm going to pin it to the center. Okay. Here we go. Let's see what happens. That was bad. Don't want that. I'm going to pin it to that left side. So what happens now is it's telling me that it's going to maintain this relationship with the edge of the page. Okay, so I pin it to the left, it will maintain that relationship. All right, so when I do bring it down here to 320, I have preserved my edges. Okay, and we want that. We want to make sure that that happens. The other thing I'm going to need to fix here is my name, because it keeps condensing. So I can fix that as well really easily. Just going to grab my cursor tool. Okay, click on my name, and I'm not going to resize that either. So I'm going to hit none. So let's see what happens now. All right, and once again, this has been pushed off a little bit. So let's go back out. I'm going to need to pin it so it stays where it is in relation to that left side of the border there. Okay, let's see what happens now. All right, everybody see that? Okay, so again, this is what my website's going to look like when I am designing on a mobile phone, and this is what it's going to look like when it is on a desktop or a laptop. We can even blow it out here. If you're on a really big screen, this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so I've got my master. Now I need to make some choices about where I want my user to be able to go, what sort of experience I want to design. And in this class, this is obviously going to be a professional website for the class, so we need to think about that. I'm going to design a home page. I'm going to design, or an about page. I'm going to design some other pages to display my work for the class. If we go out to our syllabus, we know that we have some different assignments. We have projects, and we also have this usability study. And I'm going to change this one to about. All right. Don't think of this as a one-off experience here where you're designing today and you're done with it. This should be something that you're revising and something that you're playing with all the time, because this is a representation of who you are for a potential employer. In the same way that your resume is something that's always a work in progress. So I'm actually going to delete these pages here. I don't need any other pages. If you want to add pages on here, as long as it's professional, you need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to have a welcoming page that's going to tell me a little bit about myself, and then I will also have some links for my users so they can check out some of my projects and also my usability study. Again, you are master of your own design. Design this in a intuitive way for your user that gets your message across, right? So I've got an about page, projects, usability study. So I'm going to go back up here to my main page, and I need to create some sort of menu on here, right? So that's the next step. So for my menu, I am going to get into some of these widgets here. And these are really cool tools that you can use to design your websites. I'm going to click on widgets, and there's a whole library here. We've got buttons, okay, that will help our user advance or serve some sort of function. It'll take you to websites or advance you in pages or pull up forms. You've got composition forms. These are ways that you can actually display information for your user. For example, like a tooltip that tells the user how to move around the website or how something functions. Ways to get information, composition buttons. And again, these are really important these days in mobile-ready websites because you don't want to just write a bunch of stuff across a page. Okay, that doesn't work anymore. To have some sort of application or some sort of device, widget within your website that kind of controls that information, offers a little more usability to the user. That's what's desired aesthetically and in terms of a usability standpoint these days. We also have some forms. This will allow your user to get in contact with you if they do need to talk to you about anything. You can custom design these forms. We have menus. This is what we're going to be doing next. I'm going to design using two different menus, depending on if we're using mobile ready or we're using a larger browser view. We have panels. These are, you may have seen these on websites. These allow you to click, and again, this is a way to display text to your user. We also have slideshows. Okay, slideshows are great for about pages. There's lots of usability control within any of these widgets here, and we also have access to social media, which is something that's super important these days. Whether you're showing off a video, you have links to, some sort of sales that you're doing, or connections with your Facebook. Okay, again, you need to figure out what conventions are accepted in your field. And make sure that you're maintaining all of your social media in an appropriate way, because that's something that's going to hamper you in the future Once it goes on the web, it's on the web. Right? You lose control, and potential employers can, and they are actually quite savvy at searching the social media of potential job candidates. It's time to become professionals. Let's just go out here just so I can show you. I don't want to put that. I don't want to put the slideshow on my master page. This is just a master page. I want to put my slideshow on the page where I want it to reside. At this point, I am going to show you how to create a menu bar. All right, and this is going to be a menu bar that functions just for a traditional website. I'm not going to show you the mobile ready one just yet. Okay, so just as a basic primer, I've got my main pages here: about, projects, and usability study. So I'm going to come down here to my widgets library, and I am going to come down to menus. Okay, so for a larger browser, a horizontal menu is to be desired, and for a mobile ready website, eventually I'm going to build a vertical menu bar. All right, so what I want to do is I want to click on horizontal, and then I just literally take this out and I drag it. We'll see what happens here. All right, so when I actually drag it out, we can see what happens. My pages show up on this master page with the actual names of the page for the user. So that's already done for me. So I brought my menu out, and now I want to look at what happens when it collapses. Okay. Wow, it's just a total mess if I'm going to put it on a website. So I'm actually going to fix that a little bit later on, but I am going to change some design elements. This whole boxy menu thing isn't too cool these days. So I am going to remove the strokes, or remove the fill. And sometimes we have to come out and we have to click, and you just have to keep playing with things. Don't give up on the actual builds, okay? Don't give up on these websites. I've taken out the stroke, okay? And now I want to blow this up a little bit. I want to actually use the same font that's in my name emblem, which is Copper Plate Gothic. So in order to do that, I go up to text. I'm in Georgia right now, and I want to change it to Copper Plate Gothic. Again, you have to keep playing around with these things sometimes to get them to work for the design that you want. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it to this right side so that it kind of moves when it's collapsing. Okay, it's shrinking up. This is fine, but I do have some problems when we get into mobile ready. I'm going to teach you how to fix that next week. Today is just a general introduction. We will get this more mobile ready next week. All right, let's go out to the About page so we can work on this a little bit. I brought out a widget here. I did that by selecting on my slideshow, and I just dragged it out onto the page. Okay. Now my controls for my slideshow are up here, this little blue dot. Okay. I can add images to the slideshow. Slideshows are great, but we also want to add some text. So I'm thinking this featured news might be a good way to display some information about you. You also have a picture. Okay. So come up with some titles to help explain yourself. Some usability control. Your secret friend is always Control-Z. This Adobe Muse requires a lot of clicking to get it to do what you want. Sometimes, again, you just have to play with it. Also, somewhere around here, we want to have your CV. So state buttons are good for that. I'm going to go to widgets, and I'm going to find my buttons. Just drop it on out. Okay. Alright, so what I've done is I've created a resume button, which I can display on my page. And I can link it to my resume. So the way that I do that is I click on the button and I come up here to hyperlinks, and I'm going to add a link to it. So if I go into Google Drive, I can get a shareable link, copy it, and drop it right into my resume here. And now I've got a link. Okay. I also want to make sure that there's a hyperlink on the actual text box in case somebody clicks on that. Remember, you can't break this stuff. You just do have to keep playing with it and figuring out how you want to display your ethos, your professional ethos. For my projects page, I'm going to do something similar here. You can actually name your projects as you make them. So if we go back out to my main page, I've got about, I've got projects. Eventually I'll create a usability study that will go in here. Okay? So this is a great start. And the last thing that I want to show you is when we publish a website, we're going to publish, export as HTML. Okay. And what we want to do is name it. And we're going to drop it into that folder that we've created. Into professional web page, and I'm going to hit choose, hit OK. This will be your So what we have here is kind of a default page that Adobe Muse sends us, so it shows us what our website's going to look like. It's important to realize that this is not a website. These are just the files that are used to create a website. Okay, so this is what I have so far. If I change my browser size, you can see what happens. All right, again, we're going to need to fix that a little bit later on. So let's look at these files. Let's see what we've made here. This is what's really important, an important lesson for you. So we have to think about computer science and how web browsers work. So when we go into our professional web page now, we have all of these files that are used to actually make our website. Okay, So we have the CSS files that offer our controls. We have the images that we're using to build our website. We also have the scripts that tells us how our website actually looks on the specific pages. We have the HTML pages that control that as well. So what happens is when you open up an actual browser, the browser goes to these HTML pages and connects into these files for the scripts and the images and the operations like CSS that explain how this website's supposed to look. What we need to do is we need to drop all of this stuff into our server, okay, which is going to be run through Clemson, and I will teach you how to do that in subsequent lessons. But realize right now you've designed a website, but you don't actually have a website now. Okay, you need to be checking in with your email to see if Clemson has actually issued you that website. That's going to be important in the next couple classes. Okay, hopefully everybody's requested a website by this point. Hopefully that's a good enough lesson for today. I hope you learned a little bit about Adobe Muse. If you need extra instruction, it's really important that you go to YouTube and you find it. It's also super important that you're not satisfied with your design. Your design is something that you continually need to work on, to play with, to get it to do what you want it to do, so that it will represent you in the way that you want it to represent you. Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing what your about pages look like. So what you need to do now is to share a screenshot of your about page, and I'd also like you to comment on some other people's work. Okay, if I were to comment on this one right now, obviously I need to do some things to personalize it. I also need to do some things to make sure that my all of my fonts are matching up, okay, that they're readable. We're going to be learning more about some design choices to make in chapter 4, 5, and 6 of your textbook. Okay, but again, we can't learn everything all in one day. We're just going to keep working on our website and building on this, and this is going to turn into our final portfolio. So hopefully this was a good start for you, and again, I'm looking forward to what you come up with.